solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall provide in the matter now and here to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, under the pains and penalties of perjury.
I do.
Please have a seat. Just keep your voice up nice and loud. Okay.
And you may proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Yes, good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Lieutenant John Fanning, Fanning.
And Lieutenant, where do you work?
I work for the Massachusetts State Police assigned to the Norfolk District Attorney's Office.
How long have you been with the Massachusetts State Police?
20 years next month.
And how long have you been assigned to the District Attorney's Office?
13 years.
And how long have you been a lieutenant?
Since December of 21.
Lieutenant, I'd like to ask you some questions concerning January 6th, 2023. That day, what was your involvement into the investigation to the disappearance of Ana Walsh?
I had responded to the command post in Cohasset behind the Stop and Shop off of Route 3A.
And at some point that day, did you leave to retrieve any digital devices?
I did.
Where were you going to get those devices?
The Walsh resident at 516 Chief Justice Cushing Highway.
And how did you know that you were able to go to that location to get those devices?
I initially spoke to Sergeant Buchanan, and then I spoke with Attorney Tracy Minor.
When did you speak to Attorney Minor, if you remember?
It would have been just before I left to go there. I'd say sometime in the 4 p.m. hour.
And how did you contact Attorney Minor?
By phone.
And can you tell us about the conversation you had with Attorney Minor?
Yes. I introduced myself. I hadn't met her previously, so made a brief introduction. Told her that I had spoken to Sergeant Buchanan, that he was out of pocket because he was preparing for a trip to Washington, D.C., and that I'd be handling communications while he was gone. It was a cordial conversation. She was very cooperative. I explained that she had had a previous conversation with Sergeant Buchanan and a email communication with First Assistant Len Beeland. I said, I'd like to go get those devices as soon as possible. She agreed. She said that Brian was home and that I could head over there. We also had a brief discussion about why the timeline of the Walsh oldest child, that he had stated that Ana had touched the device and fixed it for him. That was really important to us because we were trying to hone in on surveillance.
And so what did you tell Attorney Minor about that device? Is that what you said to her?
Yes, we had a conversation about the importance of narrowing down our search timeline for vehicles potentially coming to and from that residence.
Now, did you want to go get those right now, as you just said?
Well, we were trying to find Ana Walsh. It was important that we got those devices. It was my understanding from other investigators that Ana used different devices. That was according to Brian, that Ana had utilized multiple devices. Brian had stated to investigators in previous interviews that Ana would use his phone from time to time. She had used it for Uber and Lyft. And then obviously the oldest Walsh's device was important because of this account from the oldest Walsh about Ana fixing his iPad prior to her leaving.
So you have this conversation with Attorney Minor. About how long do you think the conversation was?
5 or so minutes.
And after the conversation, where did you go?
I went to the Walsh residence.
When you arrived at the Walsh residence, who was there?
Brian Walsh.
Was anyone else home at the time?
No, not that I remember. I didn't see anyone else.
And what happened when you got to the Walsh residence? Can you just tell us what your interaction with Mr. Walsh when you got there?
Yes, I pulled in, went up to the front door, knocked. I was encountered by Mr. Walsh. I introduced myself. I had not met him previously. He invited me in. I stepped off to the left, which would have been in the kitchen area, dining area, just to my immediate left. I said, I just spoke with Attorney Minor. Did you know that I was coming? He said, yes. I said, I'm here to retrieve these devices.
And what was his demeanor like when you were speaking with him that night on January 6th?
Very cooperative, cordial, helpful.
And so you said that you were there. What devices did you think you were going there to retrieve?
His cell phone and his son's iPad mini.
And so you told him that did you tell him what devices you were looking for when you arrived?
Yes.
And so what happened after you told him about the devices you were looking for?
He went off to my left, past the kitchen into kind of a living room area. There's also a desk in that area, and very quickly came back with the iPad mini that he said was his oldest son's.
And did he produce anything else besides the iPad mini at this point in time?
He gave me his cell phone.
And after you got those two devices, what happens?
He then said that he wanted to go find another device that his kids access. I said, okay. He thought it would be helpful. At that time, he went to my right, which was into kind of an open, I don't know what I've described it, open room where the dog cage kennel was, and there was a flight of steps that went up to another room. He went out of view that way, and shortly thereafter returned with another iPad with a cracked screen.
And did he say anything when he gave you the second iPad?
He just said, my kids use this. It might be helpful to you.
What did you say after he gave you the second iPad?
We had just confirmed the passwords. He had told me the password to his cell phone, and he confirmed the passwords on the two other devices, as the kids predominantly use those, and I wrote them down.
And so after you received the passwords, what happened as far as your conversation with Mr. Walsh?
I told him we're going to try to return them as soon as possible. I appreciate him cooperating, and I left the residence.
And so once you left the residence, where did you immediately go to?
My vehicle.
And when you got into your vehicle, what did you do with any of the devices?
I put the two iPads on my passenger seat. I had Brian Walsh's phone in my hand. I checked the password that he gave me to unlock it. It would be normal for me in most situations to put the device into airplane mode to preserve data. In this case, I don't recall putting it into airplane mode because if Anna had tried to reach out, the device wouldn't work. I also went into the text app just to see the last communication with Ana Walshe, the time, which really is just like a timestamp. It could say today, yesterday, or it would go back in time with dates. Then I relocked the phone knowing that I had the correct password and put it back on top of the two iPads.
And once you did that, where did you go?
I went back to the command post.
And so when you got to the command post, Lieutenant, what did you do as far as handling who did you give these devices to?
Trooper Connor Keefe.
Why did you give them to Trooper Connor Keefe?
Trooper Keefe is one of our forensics examiners. So he was there waiting, and I was arranging for him to take them back to our Canton office for download.
Do you have an idea of when you gave these to Trooper Keefe?
It was immediately following coming back from the Walsh residence.
And so, did you give Trooper Keefe any commands at this point in time as far as what to do with these devices?
I gave him the three devices, kind of stacked up on top of one another with a piece of paper with the passwords. And I told him, you have consent to download and analyze the data of the phone from December 25th until the present.
And did you give him anything else besides those three devices and the piece of paper with the passwords?
No.
And on January 6th, did you have any further conversations with Attorney Minor?
I do not recall any conversation with her on the 6th.
So, do you know when those devices were returned to Mr. Walsh?
The afternoon, approximately 1:30 on January 7th.
Now, later that afternoon, were any of the troopers assigned to your detective unit dispatched to the area of Swampscott?
We're talking January 7th.
January 7th, yes.
Yes, they were.
Okay. And to be clear, we're talking about Saturday, January 7th. Who was dispatched to that area of Swampscott?
At approximately 4 p.m., I dispatched Trooper Kukowski, Sergeant Panazelis, Trooper Gobranson, and Trooper Sullivan.
Where did you send Trooper Kukowski?
CVS in Swampscott.
Why did you send him to CVS in Swampscott?
Because Brian Walsh had told Trooper DeChico and Detective Schmidt that he had went there when he visited his mother.
And where did you send the other 3 troopers, Gobranson, Sullivan, and Pantazelis?
Whole Foods in Swampscott.
Why did you send them to Whole Foods in Swampscott?
Because the defendant said that he had went there when he went up to his mother's residence.
And so why are you sending troopers to these locations that the defendant said he was at?
To confirm if he went there.
And so that was done, those troopers were dispatched on Saturday, January 7th at approximately what time?
Between 4 and 5 p.m.
And that time frame, when was it that you heard back from Trooper Kukowski about the CVS in Swampscott?
I'd say somewhere in the 6 to 7 p.m. range. I can't recall the exact time.
And what was it Trooper Kukowski able to confirm as far as the defendant entering the CVS in Swampscott?
He was not there.
And was Trooper Kukowski dispatched to another CVS at this point in time?
Yes.
Which one?
I don't recall exactly. That wasn't at my direction. That was something he did on his own, which would be normal for investigators.
And did you receive knowledge from Trooper Kukowski if he had discovered the defendant on video of another CVS to confirm his timeline?
Yes, and he did not see Brian Walsh at the other CVS.
Now, going to Whole Foods, who was sent to Whole Foods?
Sergeant Panazelis and Troopers Sullivan and Gobranson.
And what were they able to discover as far as confirming the defendant's location at Whole Foods as he related to Trooper DeChico?
He did not go there either.
And about what time were they at Whole Foods to discover this?
Somewhere after 5 p.m. on the 7th.
Now, when were you ever notified about the contents of the devices that were given to Trooper Keefe on the 6th?
Around 6 p.m. on the 7th.
And who notified you as far as the contents of any of the devices?
Trooper Nick Guarino.
And who is Trooper Guarino in your detectives unit?
He's also a forensics examiner.
And how did he notify you?
He called me.
And what did he say when he called you?
He said, I found something in the search history, and that's interesting. I said, well, what was it? And it was numerous searches about dismembering a body, how to embalm a body, how to get rid of a body, numerous searches related to that, another search related to divorce.
And so after he notified you of that, did he communicate to you and other troopers what he had found?
Yes.
How so?
He sent an email.
And as far as analyzing the iPad mini, what was your understanding as further analyzation of the iPad mini at this point in time?
We were going to stop.
And what was going to be done as far as the iPad mini after stopping? This is the data we're talking about.
Yes, we had stopped, and we were going to obtain a search warrant to seize that device.
So to seize that device. Now, where did you believe the device was located on the evening of January 7th?
It was back at the home.
And so what was done as far as trying to obtain a search warrant for the home?
We started writing one on the evening of January 7th.
And was one obtained?
Yes.
When was that search warrant executed?
Between 8 and 9 a.m. on January 8th.
Now, were you there when it was executed?
I was.
So when the search warrant was executed, who was home at the Walsh residence?
Brian Walsh, his mother Diane, the 3 children, and their dog.
And after the search warrant was initially served, did you have any further conversations with Attorney Minor?
I did. Once we secured the scene, I called Attorney Minor and notified her that we were executing a search warrant at the Walsh residence. She told me that she was headed there and she'd be there shortly.
And how long after that did it take for her to arrive?
I'd say 15 minutes or so.
And once she arrived, what happened did you have any further contact with Attorney Minor?
We spoke in the driveway. I handed her a copy of the search warrant and I told her we're searching the residence. Do you have a place for the Walsh family to go? Which she replied she did. And we arranged for her and the Walshes to leave to go to Attorney Minor's house in Situate.
Now, after that interaction with Attorney Minor, did you have any further interaction on Sunday, January 8th with Attorney Minor?
I did.
When was that?
When we went to arrest Brian Walsh.
And where was that?
At her residence.
And what was the contact you had with Attorney Minor at this point in time?
She met us right out front. She actually came out before we got to the door. And I asked where Brian was. She said, in the house. I said, we need to go talk to Brian right now. And she said, well, he's not going to say anything. I said, that's fine, but we need to find him right away. We walked right in. Dining room was right off to the left. Brian Walsh was standing there, and we placed him under arrest.
Now, Lieutenant, understanding you had the opportunity to have your communications with Trooper Guarino on the evening of Saturday, January 7th. Had you not had the conversations for Trooper Guarino on Saturday, January 7th, what would the State Police Detective Unit been doing to obtain a search warrant for the residence of Mr. Walsh that evening?
Had I not had that conversation with Trooper Guarino?
Yes.
At that point, the information came all at the same time, I would say, but the issue that we were having is regardless of the search history, we were still misled by Brian Walsh. In the information that he gave us, we spent time and resources going up to confirm his information. I think had we not known that information of the searches, we still would have written a search warrant for the house, less physiological fluid and instruments of the crime.
What information did you have as far as ransom emails at this point in time?
We had received an email, it was on the morning of the 7th, meaning we, Cohasset Police, from a Richard Walker, requesting a ransom. And that stating basically that he had Ana Walshe and was requesting a certain amount of money for her to be returned.
And where was the last place Ana Walshe had been seen prior to her disappearance, to your knowledge, on the evening of January 7th?
Inside the home on January 1st.
Your Honor, may I have a moment?
Yes.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Lieutenant, have you reviewed the transcripts of the interviews of Mr. Walsh conducted by Cohasset Police and Massachusetts State Police on January 4th, January 5th, January 7th?
I would say not directly the transcripts, but I have some understanding of them, sir.
So when you testified here just moments ago that Mr. Walsh, Brian Walsh, told one or more of those people that Ana Walshe had used his phone to contact Lyft, or Uber. You remember saying that?
Yes. Yes.
Where is that? Where is that in the interviews that I just described of Mr. Walsh?
I do believe I read it. I could be wrong for sure, but I do believe I read it. But I feel like that at least some type of communication was given to me at that time.
Well, was it a communication? But you're not suggesting it was a communication given to you by Mr. Brian Walsh. You're saying a communication by one of your colleagues or somebody. You're not sure.
Correct. And it could have been one of the child's devices. I'm not sure how he testified previously if I specifically just said Brian's phone. But that is what I remember.
And when you testify that based on your conclusion or opinion that Mr. Walsh had misled people with regards to where he was, you're relying on what another trooper reported to you based on his review of what?
Video surveillance and also items that he stated he purchased they had asked about.
And have you looked at those, whatever you're referring to, the videos of, say, CVS and Whole Foods?
No.
And did you, before you relied on that information, did you talk to anybody at CVS or Whole Foods to discuss how their cameras are situated, what they view, what they don't view? Did you conduct anything like that?
Not personally, no.
And you are aware of the fact, aren't you, Lieutenant, that when Mr. Walsh was being asked questions about where he went and where he had been on certain days, that he was being asked those questions at his home, and there was distractions going on during those interviews. You're aware of that, correct?
I'm not I wasn't there.
Okay. Are you aware of the fact that on the recordings you could hear a dog barking repeatedly?
I didn't hear the recordings, but that would make sense.
And are you aware of the fact that Mr. Walsh specifically told the troopers when he was being... I'm sorry, strike that. Are you aware of the fact that when he was being asked questions on January 4th, he was actually talking and telling them that he was tired and hadn't had sleep, and words to that effect?
No.
And in your experience as a state trooper investigating crimes, it's fair to say, isn't it, that when someone is being asked questions about a missing spouse, let's say, the mother of their children, they can be under some stress, correct?
Absolutely.
Now, you also told us that you were the one that went out and retrieved devices on January 6th of 2023, correct?
Yes, sir.
And back in January 6th of 2023, you didn't write in a report about that, did you?
I did not.
And then you told us on direct examination today that you remember having a conversation with Attorney Tracy Minor on January 6th, correct?
Yes.
And you didn't write a report about that.
Correct.
And what you've done in the last week or so is you've written reports regarding those interactions, correct?
Yes, sir.
And one of the reports that you just wrote a couple of weeks ago, if not a week ago, you dated that the report date is January 6th of 2023, correct?
Yes, when it happened.
No. The title of your report is Interview 2023-112-4-116, report date 01/06/2023.
Correct.
When you enter those dates on these Massachusetts State Police reports in that particular space, that is supposed to indicate the date the report was written, isn't it?
It is. I think it's a bit confusing. Sometimes it's the date I'm writing the report. Sometimes it's a newer system that we just had switched over to in the last few years. Sometimes it's the day I write it. Sometimes it's the date of the actual report.
Well, in fact,
But I usually reflect it in my first sentence, the actual time of the event.
well, in fact, like I just said, you've written no less than 3 reports in the last week or so, reciting what you testified to.
Yes.
And in 2 of the reports, you put report date, May 7th, 2025, right?
Right.
And in the other report, you put the date of May 15th, 2025.
Correct.
So whether the system changed over the years, the fact is the system has been the same since you started drafting these reports years later about what you recall happened and didn't happen back on January 6th, correct?
Yes.
And one of the things you just told us that when you went to the house on January 6th, that at some point Mr. Walsh then went up and got another iPad, a second iPad, correct?
Yes.
And you told us today on direct examination that he said something to the effect of, my son uses this, maybe it'll be helpful, correct?
Yes.
In the report that you just wrote in the last week or so, you didn't include anything of such a statement, did you?
I'm not sure.
May I approach now?
Yes.
Can I just see which one you're referring to? There's a number.
Okay.
Got it. You want to go to the other ones as well? Make sure I have them. Okay, you got it. Thank you.
Then I'm just going to show you your report that just ask you questions about. That has a date on it of January 6th. In fact, you want the first page too?
No, this is good, sir. Got it.
That's the report where you talk about going to the house and Mr. Walsh retrieving a second iPad, correct?
Yes.
And nowhere in that report does it say anything about him telling you, my son used this, or words to that effect, that maybe it'll be helpful.
Correct.
And it is fair to say, isn't it, that when you went over to the house to pick up the devices, you had been told that you were to pick up 2 devices, correct?
Yes.
One cell phone and one iPad.
Yes.
And that was pursuant to the agreement that was reached between Assistant District Attorney Lynn Beelan and Attorney Tracy Minor, correct?
About 2 devices?
Yes.
I was told to get 2 devices. I'm not sure if the agreement, as I had read it, specifically stated 2 devices.
When you say that agreement, what are you referring to specifically? A written agreement?
The email
Okay.
between Attorney Minor and Attorney Beeland.
So as you sit here today, you don't even have a recollection of whether that email that's referred to as the agreement only references Ryan Walsh's cell phone and the iPad belonging to the 6-year-old.
As I remember, correct. As I remember it, we talked about what data was going to be extracted and what time frame.
No, but I'm asking you specifically about the devices you had been told to go pick up. You were told to go pick up one cell phone and one iPad.
That was my communication, yes.
And you got that communication from Sergeant Buchanan.
Sergeant Buchanan, yes, sir.
You didn't talk to Assistant District Attorney Lynn Beelan, did you? Regarding the agreement and what you were to pick up.
I do not recall specifically, but she was at the command post that night. I just don't recall a specific conversation with her about it.
And when you talked to Attorney Tracy Minor on January 6th, before you retrieved the items, you didn't talk to her about picking up extra items or anything of the sort. You just were talking about one cell phone and one iPad.
Correct.
And it's fair to say, isn't it, that the state of the knowledge of the investigation that you possessed on January 7th of 2023, you had no information whatsoever that the iPad that was purportedly belonging to the 6-year-old had been used in any way to go from one location to another or anything like that, correct?
Just give me a second. I'm trying to process the question here. On January 7th, can you ask it again, sir? I'm sorry.
Restate the question,
It was-
because I'm not
yeah.
following it. If I can't follow it,
Sorry about
it
that.
doesn't have any evidentiary value to me. So why don't we just try that again?
I'll be glad to, Judge. I don't think I can follow. My question to you is that based on what you have learned thus far up to January 7th, you had no knowledge that the iPad that you went to pick up on January 6th had been in fact used by Ana Walsh, had you?
Are we talking about the iPad mini or the cracked iPad?
The iPad mini?
Well, we did have information from the oldest Walsh that she had manipulated that device.
Right, but you didn't have any other information other than, quote, the manipulation of the device.
What time are we talking? In the morning of January 7th? Previous to Trooper Gordon calling me?
Let's start there. Yes. Yes.
No, I did not. No.
And you certainly didn't have any reason to believe that an iPad belonging to a 6-year-old would contain so-called location data or search history or anything like that, did you?
Location data, yes, it could include location data. There was no thought in my mind about search history at that time.
Okay. And you say it could have had location data in it, but you didn't have any specific information about any specific location data that might be in a 6-year-old child's iPad, did you?
No.
And you didn't have any information conveyed to you by anyone about another iPad described as a cracked iPad that you retrieved on January 6th also, correct?
Correct.
In fact, when you went there, you weren't even expecting to pick up an iPad, a second iPad, were you?
Correct.
And it's fair to say, isn't it, that the Mass State Police utilizes body cams when they conduct searches, correct?
Yes.
You did so in this case, didn't you?
Correct. So we use them until we secure the home, and then we usually deactivate them.
And were you wearing a body cam on January 6th when you went to the house to pick up the items?
No.
And you are familiar with Massachusetts State Police consent to search forms, correct?
Yes.
And you didn't use one or try to use one or attempt to fill one out before you took the items, the devices, for Mr. Walsh that day on January 6th, did you?
No, we were working together cooperatively to find Ana Walsh, and I was happy that we were working together.
No, but I understand your answer, but you didn't use a consent to search form.
There was already an agreement, so I think it wouldn't have made sense after just talking to Attorney Minor, talking to Sergeant Buchanan, an agreement in writing to then show up with a consent form. I think Attorney Minor would have had a problem with that.
Well, you think that, but my question is simple. You used those consent to search forms. You did not use one in this case.
That's correct.
And those consent to search forms, without belaboring the point, they're used to make sure that what you do, when it's looked at later on, that there's evidence that there was, in fact, a voluntary consent, and that whatever parameters of any search that was going to be conducted would be followed, and that the person giving consent understood that.
Yes.
That's all I have. Thank you, Judge.
Redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor. Lieutenant, you were asked a question about one of your police reports concerning whether or not you had mentioned that the son might have used the iPad in the police report.
Yes.
Do you have a memory of that paragraph where you mentioned that you were asked about as far as the son using the iPad?
You guys are confusing me. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Do I have
don't
a
worry. We're right there with you.
Do I have a memory of the paragraph? Is the one I just read?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember what you mentioned as far as the son using the iPad in that report? Would the report help you out?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you the report, which has a number of 2003-112-4/116. I want you to take a look at the third paragraph, specifically the second sentence. Go to the third.
Got it.
All right. Lieutenant, did you write in the report whether or not the son used the iPad?
I did.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
I need recross. The witness may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I can call my step witness.
You may.
Thank you, Your Honor. The Commonwealth would call Connor Keith.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall provide in the matter now in hearing shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, under the pains and penalties of perjury. Yes. Please have a seat, and just make sure to keep your voice up nice. Thank you.
You may
Thank you, Your
proceed.
Honor. Thank you, Your Honor. Sir, could you please state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Connor Keefe, Keefe.
And sir, where do you work?
I work for the Massachusetts State Police.
And how long have you been with Massachusetts State Police?
Almost 8 years.
What is your current rank?
Trooper.
Within the state police, do you work for a certain unit?
Yes.
What unit?
Currently assigned to the Norfolk District Attorney's Office.
And do you have any special responsibilities within that unit?
Yes.
What are those?
Digital forensic examiner and cell phone record analyst.
And have you received any training concerning the examination of cell phone or digital devices?
Yes.
Can you tell us kind of briefly what that training has been?
Sure. I have numerous trainings from Cellbrite, which is a cell phone forensics company. Also through Burla, which is a motor vehicle forensics company. I have online and hands-on training through Magnet, and I have cell phone record analysis training from LexisNexis and the FBI CAS team.
Are you familiar with a company called Graykey?
Yes.
And have you received any trainings from them?
Yes.
All of these trainings that you mentioned, do they carry certifications?
Yes.
What does it take to get the certifications?
Majority of the time, it's an in-person 40-hour training.
And so, in addition, have you had to take tests in these different disciplines as far as Celebrate and Graykey?
Yes.
Did you pass those tests?
Yes.
Now, I'd like to ask you some questions as far as your involvement in the disappearance of Ana Walsh.
Yes.
When did you first become involved?
January 5th, 2023.
And how did you become involved?
I was requested by my supervisors to assist with analyzing exigent cell phone records from Verizon.
I'm sorry, was that exigent cell phone records?
Correct.
Okay. And whose number did you believe you were examining?
I believe the number was associated with Ana Walsh.
And when was the last time that number connected with the network?
It was January 2nd, 3:14 a.m.
And do you know where that number connected with the network as far as tower?
It was in the area of 516 Chief Justice Cushing Highway, Cohasset, Massachusetts.
when were you doing this on January 5th?
Late in the evening.
And so now I want to ask you about January 6th. On January 6th, Friday, when did you arrive in Cohasset, if you remember?
Around 8:30 p.m.
And where were you stationed in Cohasset that day?
During the day, sir.
Yes, sir.
At the CP.
And the CP, that's the command post?
Correct.
All right. Now, did anyone ever give you any digital devices that day?
Yes.
Who gave you digital devices?
Lieutenant John Fanning.
What did he give you as far as devices?
He gave me 3 mobile devices.
And what, and you say 3 mobile devices. Can you describe them? Can you tell us what they
Yes. One was an iPhone 13 mini, one was an iPad 6 mini, and one was an iPad 6.
And about what time do you think you got these devices from Lieutenant Fanning?
Sometime after 8:30 p.m.
And where did you go once you got these devices?
I went to the digital forensics lab at the Norfolk District Attorney's Office in Canton, Massachusetts.
And so you went from Cohasset to Canton at this point in time.
Correct.
And so we're talking about Friday night, January 6th.
Yes.
When you got to the lab, was there anyone else there from your unit to help you?
Yes.
Who was that?
Trooper Nicholas Garino.
So what was your understanding of what you were allowed to do with these 3 devices?
I was told that Brian Walsh and his attorney, Tracy Miner, provided consent to extract and analyze these 3 devices from December 25th, 2022 through January 6th, 2023.
And so how did you begin to do that extraction on these devices?
The first device I extracted was the iPhone 13 mini.
Okay, and so walk me through that. What did you do to extract data from the iPhone 13 mini?
Sure. So in the digital forensics lab, used Gray Key, which is a forensic machine. We use specialized forensics hardware and software. You will have these Gray Key software program running on a forensic computer. You will plug the device into the Gray Key hardware machine, and then the extraction process will begin.
And why didn't you just do all 3 at once?
We are limited to one Gray Key forensic machine in the lab.
And how long does it take for Gray Key to get the data from the device?
Could be hours.
That night, do you know when you began the extraction from the iPhone 13 mini?
Approximately 9:30 p.m.
And do you know when that extraction was completed?
I believe 12:28 a.m. on January 7th.
Okay, so that took approximately 3 hours-ish?
Yes, sir.
After that data was extracted from that device, the iPhone 13 mini, what did you do next?
The next device I performed the forensic extraction on was the iPad 6 mini.
The iPad 6 mini. And did you wait until that was completed?
No,
What did you do?
I went home.
Okay. When was the data finally extracted from that device, if you remember?
I recall about 1:30 a.m.
Okay.
on the 7th.
And you weren't there when it was completed?
No, sir.
When did you return back to the digital forensics lab in Canton to continue your work?
Approximately 10:30 a.m. on the 7th.
Was Trooper Guarino with you at this point in time?
No, he was not.
What did you do next?
Next, I conducted the extraction on the iPad 6.
And when did you begin that?
About 10:50 a.m.
And when was that extraction completed?
Just before 11:30 a.m.
Now, once the data has been extracted from the 3 devices, what do you do with the data?
All the data has to be, so once the data is extracted, it is placed on the forensic server from the Gray Key software.
So how long does it take to get from the Gray Key software into the server?
Again, it could take hours depending on how large the extraction is, how much data there is.
And is this one at a time, or can you do all 3 at once?
We tend to do one at a time.
When did Trooper Guarino arrive on January 7th, that Saturday?
About 3 p.m.
And so, did you have any difficulties getting the data from Gray Key into the server?
No.
All right, so the data's in the server. Now what do you do with the data?
In order to read the data, we use a program called Cellbrite Physical Analyzer.
And so how long does it take to get the data from the server to be read by the Cellbrite program?
Again, it could take hours.
And so that day, when were you finally able to start looking at data from any of the devices?
Approximately 5 p.m. on January 7th.
When Gray Key completes extracting data from a device, what is created from Gray Key as far as a report?
There is a Gray Key progress report.
And did Gray Key create progress reports for these devices?
Yes.
And have you reviewed those progress reports prior to today?
Yes.
And are they accurate to your understanding of how Gray Key works and what the device did as far as pulling the data?
Yes.
Your Honor, I apologize, but I think you have my only undoctored copies of the 3 Gray Key reports in the binder, and I was going to seek to mark those as the next exhibits. But if there's no objection from counsel, I think we can just move right along. So,
Okay, we'll move along then.
thank you, Your Honor. I'd ask that those next 3 reports from Gray Key be marked as the next 3 exhibits. And I lost my chart, but I believe that would put us at
16, 17.
Thank you, Ms. Borges.
All right, so they're in evidence as 16, 17, and 18, and at some point, I know soon, not today, soon, like tomorrow morning,
Yes.
you're going to have a conversion chart for me.
You are right, Your Honor. We will do that.
All right.
Thank you. And I apologize for the confusion. What device did you have the opportunity to review? What data from what device did you have the opportunity to review?
The iPhone 13 mini.
Where were you reviewing this data from the iPhone 13 mini at the office in Canton?
I was on the first floor in the forensic lab.
Where was Trooper Guarino at this point in time?
He was on the second floor in the main office area.
And did one of you start before the other, or was it around the same time?
It was around the same time.
What device's data was he reviewing that night?
The iPad 6 mini.
Now, what did you notice when reviewing the iPhone 13 mini as far as the device being unlocked between January 1st and 2nd?
I noticed there were 4 unlocks between that time frame.
When you're looking at the Cellbrite program, can you just describe for us what does the Cellbrite reader look like when you're looking at it?
So Cellbrite Physical Analyzer, it's interactive. So it parses the data out to a readable format. It parses it out into calls, contacts, messages, web history, locations, stuff of that nature.
And so what part of the Cellbrite program were you looking at as far as analyzing the data?
I went to the timeline view.
All right, what's the timeline view show you?
Timeline view gives you the ability, it shows you all device activity from the whole device.
And so what did you do as far as confining the amount, the time in the timeline that you were looking at?
I condensed the timeline down to January 25th, 2022 to January 6th, 2023.
And so you...
January 26th? January 6th.
January 6th, December 25th, 2022 to January 6th, 2023.
Got it.
Got it.
Yes, Your Honor.
And so why didn't you go to December 24th of 2022?
That was outside the consent agreement.
And so when you're looking at this timeline function and you confine it to that area, what access do you have to data before the 25th of December?
None.
So again, you're looking at the timeline feature. And why do you choose to look at the timeline feature?
Because that will narrow down or condense the amount of data in which I am looking at.
Now, while you were looking at the timeline for the iPhone 13 mini that night, did anyone interrupt you?
Yes,
Who?
Trooper David Chico.
And what did Trooper DeChico ask of you?
Trooper DeChico informed me that he conducted an interview earlier in the day on January 7th, and Brian Walsh stated that on January 2nd, the only place he went to was Press Juice Bar in Norwell, Massachusetts.
And so, after hearing that from Trooper DeChico, was there anything? Did he ask you to do anything?
He asked me to confirm or corroborate if there was any location data associated with that.
So this is on January 7th. You're looking at the timeline data and you're talking to Trooper DeChico.
Yes.
And what do you discover as far as location data on January 7th?
So prior to that, after Trooper DeChico told me, through the timeline application within Cellbrite, I filtered out all data but native location data within January 1st to January 6th.
Okay.
And from then, I started my analysis for January 2nd.
What is native location data in cell phone analysis?
Native location data is embedded in the Apple iOS operating system. It can come from a number of different things: Bluetooth, satellites, GPS, Wi-Fi, a number of different things.
And how is the device doing that?
The device constantly communicates with different technologies.
Now, you've confined the location data, the native location data from January 1 to January 6, and you're looking at what time frame now?
The whole
time.
the whole time frame.
And did you have any further conversation with Trooper DeChico about what you're seeing on January 2nd?
Yes.
What did you say?
Approximately 4:15 p.m., January 2nd, 2023, the device is in the area of Home Depot in Rockland, Massachusetts.
Now, do you talk any further with Trooper DeChico at this point in the evening?
Not that I recall.
Did you have any conversations after that with Trooper Guarino?
Yes.
And when was it that Trooper Guarino talked to you that night?
Approximately 6:30 p.m.
And what was it that Trooper Guarino approached you about?
He had found some concerning searches on the device that he was analyzing.
And he was looking at the iPad Mini 6?
Correct.
The one without the crack screen?
Yes.
Okay. And what was it that now he tells you this, do you do anything to look at the data that he's talking to you about?
No.
Okay, so what did he tell you about?
He told me there was a number of concerning searches that occurred on the iPad.
So what was done as far as any further searching of the iPad 6 Mini?
To my knowledge, Trooper Guarino, he had stopped his analysis and informed the supervisors.
Now, with what you were looking at, which was the iPhone 13, did you stop your analysis as far as the work you were doing on the iPhone 13?
No.
So, on the iPhone 13, did you have the opportunity to do any further analysis as far as native location data on that device?
Yes.
When did you do that?
January 8th.
And what were you analyzing as far as native location data for the iPhone 13 device on January 8th?
January 1st through January 6th.
And in reviewing that data, did you notify any troopers to go anywhere?
Yes.
Who did you call?
I called Lieutenant Fanning, I believe.
Okay. And where did you want to send troopers to?
The Claremont Apartments in Abington, the Point Apartment Complex in Abington, and Chatham West in Brockton, Massachusetts.
And why did you want to send troopers to those locations on January 8th?
Because at that time, it was still a critical incident, and Ana Walsh was missing, still missing at that time, and we wanted to try and locate her.
And why those apartment complexes?
In order to see if she might have went there, or
Well, how do you know, like, is the phone telling you that it's at those locations? Why are those locations significant to you? How do you know to go to those how do you know to send troopers to those locations?
in order to collect surveillance, see if anyone had seen her or.
Sure, I understand that's the why. I guess the question is the how. So what is it that you saw in the phone that said go there?
GPS points or native location points within those different areas.